Breaking news shook America. President Donald Trump was missing. His plane? Untraceable. His staff silent. And his last message, a single word that no one could explain. What really happened during those 7 missing days? President Donald Trump had suddenly vanished. No public appearances, no statements, no posts on Truth Social, Twitter, or anywhere else. For a man who had built an empire on being seen and heard, President Trump's sudden silence was deafening. Reporters called it the most mysterious week in modern political history. At first, many assumed it was a rumor, maybe a glitch on social media, or a simple delay in his schedule. But as the hours passed, it became clear that this was no misunderstanding. President Trump's private jet hadn't been tracked taking off from any airport. His motorcade hadn't been seen leaving Mar-a-Lago. Even the usually talkative staff at his Florida estate refused to comment. "Everything's fine," one aide told reporters nervously. But their tone didn't sound convincing. Something was definitely wrong. Within hours, news networks were in full panic mode. Headlines flashed, "President Trump missing?" and White House officials tight-lipped amid silence. Across social media, millions of Americans began speculating. Some claimed he had gone into hiding for security reasons. Others suggested he was secretly hospitalized. And then came the more mysterious theories, that it was part of a master political strategy, a hidden operation, or even a government cover-up. Online forums exploded with wild claims. People posted grainy photos, claiming to show him at airports or driving through rural highways in disguise. None of it could be confirmed. Meanwhile, his supporters flooded comment sections, praying for his safety and demanding answers. Political analysts, journalists, and even world leaders began asking the same question: where is President Trump? By nightfall, confusion had turned into chaos. No one, not his aides, not the press, not even his closest allies, could say where he was or why he had disappeared. And as America held its breath, one thing became painfully clear. President Donald Trump had vanished without a trace, and nobody knew why. Within just a few hours, the story spread like wildfire. Every major news network broke into their regular programming with the same headline flashing across screens in bold red: "Where is President Donald Trump?" In a matter of minutes, the hashtag #WhereIsTrump shot to the top of social media trends worldwide. Millions of Americans sat glued to their phones, scrolling through endless posts, videos, and live streams, everyone searching for a clue, a photo, anything. The uncertainty triggered panic among his supporters. Many feared the worst, that something terrible had happened behind closed doors. Others were convinced this was part of a massive secret operation, possibly to expose something big. And then there were those who believed President Trump was staging his own disappearance as a dramatic comeback move, a way to shock the world before announcing something huge. As theories spread, so did tension. Political commentators debated on live television, arguing over what it all meant. Some analysts suggested he might be at a private retreat, planning his next big step in politics. Others hinted that government officials knew more than they were letting on. At Mar-a-Lago, things grew even stranger. Security was tighter than ever, guards were everywhere, and staff members avoided questions. When reporters tried to get answers, a senior aide offered only one cryptic line: "He's safe but unavailable." Those 5 words ignited even more speculation. Safe from what? Unavailable where? Then, as the days passed, reports of odd sightings began to surface. A man resembling President Trump was seen wearing a baseball cap at a small diner in Georgia. Another claimed he was spotted in Texas, sitting inside a black SUV near a private ranch. Grainy photos and blurry videos flooded the internet, but none were ever confirmed. Every new rumor pulled America deeper into confusion. News anchors debated theories late into the night. Social media turned into a battlefield of opinions and conspiracies. Some said this was the calm before a major political storm. Others feared it signaled something far more serious, something no one could yet comprehend. And so, as night turned to day and day turned to night again, America waited, anxious, divided, and desperate for answers. By the 4th day of President Donald Trump's disappearance, the mystery took a sharp and unexpected turn. What began as silence and speculation suddenly exploded into a wave of strange reports and cryptic clues, each one deepening the intrigue. The first came from a private pilot in Florida. He claimed that 3 days earlier, he had flown a jet that looked exactly like President Trump's aircraft, same markings, same model, to a small, privately owned airfield in rural Montana. The landing had taken place late at night, under heavy fog, and the passengers were quickly ushered into waiting SUVs. The pilot said he was told not to speak to anyone about the flight, but when the disappearance made headlines, his conscience couldn't stay quiet. Soon after, a local rancher from a nearby town told reporters he had seen something unusual that same night. Around midnight, a convoy of black SUVs sped down a dirt road leading toward a remote mountain property. He described the passengers as important-looking men in dark suits and swore he caught a glimpse of someone with a familiar face. The story spread instantly. Satellite images posted online appeared to confirm part of it, showing several dark vehicles traveling along a narrow mountain pass, heading toward what looked like a secluded estate. The vehicles had government-style plates, but oddly, no one could identify which agency they belonged to. When journalists reached out to the Secret Service for comment, their response was short, cold, and mysterious. "We cannot comment on the movements of protected individuals." That single sentence sent shockwaves across the internet. What were they hiding? Then came the biggest revelation yet. An anonymous insider, reportedly from Trump's own circle, claimed that President Trump had been preparing for a private meeting with global figures, far from the reach of media or political influence. The leak suggested this wasn't an accident or an abduction. It was a deliberate move. Something major was being planned, something that could reshape the nation's political future. Speculation erupted. Was President Trump negotiating a powerful alliance, working on a global deal? Or was there a much deeper reason behind this secretive meeting? The public was restless. The world was watching. And the mystery was only growing darker. Exactly 1 week after the mysterious disappearance, President Donald Trump reappeared, suddenly, dramatically, and without a single warning. It happened at a private event in New York City, where hundreds of guests, business figures, and media representatives had gathered for what was described as a closed-door leadership summit. No one expected him to walk in. As the lights dimmed and cameras turned toward the stage, the crowd gasped. There he was, President Trump, calm, composed, and wearing that familiar, confident expression. He looked untouched by the chaos of the past week, as though nothing unusual had ever happened. Reporters immediately began shouting questions. Where have you been? Why did you disappear? Was this a health scare? A security issue? But instead of answering directly, Trump paused, smiled slightly, and said in his signature tone, "Sometimes you have to step away to prepare for something big." The room fell silent. Then, with the crowd hanging on every word, he continued, unveiling what he called the most important project of his life. He named it Operation Rebuild, a new initiative that, according to him, would reshape America's independence, economy, and future leadership on the world stage. Though he didn't go into full detail, Trump explained that the project would bring together business leaders, innovators, and international partners to create a new wave of American strength. The way he spoke made it sound part political, part economic, and entirely unprecedented. Within minutes, news outlets around the world exploded with headlines. Trump returns with secret plan. Operation Rebuild, what is it? The week of silence. Was it all strategy? Speculation soared. Some analysts argued that the entire disappearance had been a calculated move, a strategic silence to build suspense before announcing his next big chapter. Others believed it was far more complex, possibly involving private negotiations or even a high-level meeting kept off the record. Regardless of the truth, one fact was undeniable. President Trump had returned, and he now commanded the world's full attention once again. The man who vanished for 7 days had come back stronger, louder, and with a message that left the world guessing what would happen next. Even after President Donald Trump's surprising return, questions refused to fade away. Every news outlet, every political talk show, and every social media platform continued to buzz with the same burning question. What really happened during that missing week? Reporters crowded outside Trump Tower, hoping for a clue, a statement, anything that might explain the mystery. Microphones were thrust toward him at every public appearance. Yet no matter how many times he was asked, his response remained the same, calm, cryptic, and teasing. "You'll find out soon," he said with a knowing smile. Those 5 words drove the media into a frenzy. What did he mean? Find out what and when? Behind the scenes, unnamed insiders began leaking fragments of information. Some claimed President Trump had been staying at a private estate owned by a powerful international ally, someone with deep political and financial ties. Others whispered that the trip was part of a secret coordination effort, a closed-door meeting designed to shape the political landscape ahead of the next major election. Meanwhile, experts and analysts dissected every sentence from his Operation Rebuild announcement. Was it a business initiative aimed at boosting America's industries? A subtle campaign strategy to reignite his political base? Or perhaps a symbolic message, declaring that his influence on the world stage was far from over? Across social media, the story dominated conversation for weeks. Hashtags, reaction videos, podcasts, everyone had a theory. Some believed he had been planning an international partnership. Others were convinced it was an intentional media stunt to prove one thing, that no matter what, Donald Trump could still control the world's attention with a single move. News networks aired round-the-clock coverage, analyzing body language, flight logs, and unverified reports. But despite all the investigations, no one ever uncovered the full truth. One veteran journalist summed it up perfectly. President Trump didn't just vanish for a week. He reminded the world how easily he can make everything stop and focus on him. Whether it was a calculated strategy or an unsolved mystery, that single week changed the narrative once again. It reignited his supporters, rattled his critics, and reminded everyone of one simple truth. When President Donald Trump disappears, the entire world holds its breath, waiting to see what happens next.